Hi, I'm Vera. Nice to meet you. Before I tell you my story, kindly hit subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I like to know where you're from. Now let's dive in. I should have known better. I should have sent flowers, called in a polite excuse, and stayed curled up at home with a glass of wine and Netflix. But when my mother called, her voice dripping with both expectation and guilt, I found myself saying, "Of course, I'll be there." It was my sister Claire's engagement dinner. A grand affair at Maison Verde, one of the city's most talked about restaurants. My restaurant. Not that anyone in my family knew that. The irony was almost too rich. My mother had probably picked the venue to impress the future in-laws, bragging about finding such a classy spot, never realizing the woman she was forever belittling for playing with toilets on the very building they'd be sitting in. I arrived early, mostly because I didn't trust them not to mess with the seating arrangement. I dressed simply, cream silk blouse, tailored navy pants, nothing screaming "look at me," but still the kind of quiet elegance you can't buy at a department store clearance rack. The maitre d' greeted me warmly. "Welcome, Ms. Alvarez," she said, with the faintest of smiles that told me she was enjoying the secret as much as I was. The private dining room was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city skyline. The tables glowed under soft pendant lights, and the air smelled faintly of rosemary and roasted garlic. I'd spent months with my head chef perfecting this menu. Tonight's dishes were the best of what we offered. Claire arrived 10 minutes late, already glowing in a pearl-embroidered dress, her fiancé, Adam, on her arm. He looked like the kind of man who read finance blogs for fun and thought artisanal meant expensive. My parents followed, along with various cousins, aunts, and Adam's family, all bustling in with perfume, chatter, and polite laughter. The first job came before we'd even sat down. "So, Vera," my mother said, her voice loud enough to catch the attention of Adam's mother, "are you still doing that thing with toilets?" She said toilets like some people say mold. I smiled tightly. Sustainable sanitation, yes. Still going strong. Claire rolled her eyes. "You know, if you just got a real job, you wouldn't have to work so hard. Adam's firm is always hiring. You could do admin." Adam chuckled, like that was a generous suggestion. I bit back the instinct to say something sharp. Tonight wasn't about me. It was Claire's night. Besides, I'd learned long ago that arguing only fed their narrative. Instead, I sipped my wine and let the comments pass over me like smoke. Dinner began, and with each course, the tension in my chest grew. They praised the food endlessly. "This pasta is divine," Adam's mother said. "Whoever runs this place is a genius," my aunt gushed. I smiled again, the kind of smile you wear when you're holding back an entire storm. Then came my TED Talk. Or rather, their version of it. "I saw you had some video thing online," my cousin Mark said between bites of salmon. "Didn't watch the whole thing. Got kind of boring, but good for you for trying." Trying. As if my talk hadn't reached over 2 million viewers, been featured in industry magazines, and landed me 2 consulting contracts in Europe. I kept my face neutral, but my pulse thudded in my ears. I thought I'd gotten used to their dismissals, but tonight, surrounded by my work, my food, my space, it was harder to swallow. By dessert, I could feel something shifting inside me. They didn't know it yet, but the night was going to end differently than they imagined. I wasn't going to stay invisible. Not this time. The first sign that I was about to lose my patience came halfway through dessert. I was swirling the last bite of chocolate torte and raspberry coulis when Adam's father leaned back in his chair and said, "You know, Vera, your sister's lucky. Adam will provide for her, so she doesn't have to run around chasing whatever it is you do." I almost choked. The casual dismissal in his voice was like a pinprick to a balloon, quiet but deadly. Claire laughed softly, like it was all so charmingly true. I set my fork down. "Some of us like what we do," I said lightly, but the words tasted like steel. The conversation swerved away, but my mind didn't. Maison Verde wasn't just a restaurant to me. It was proof. Proof that my years of building a sustainable sanitation company from scratch, reinvesting my profits, and enduring sleepless nights had led to something tangible, elegant, and thriving. I'd bought the property last year and opened the restaurant as part of my larger environmental brand, eco-conscious fine dining, zero food waste, closed-loop systems. Every inch of the place reflected my vision. And here I was, sitting in the middle of it all, invisible. As coffee was served, I caught the maitre d's' eye. She raised her brows in a subtle question. I shook my head slightly. Not yet. I wanted them to feel the shift when it came. Adam's mother turned to me. So, Vera, are you seeing anyone? Or are you still married to your work? She laughed as though that was the most original joke in the world. I smiled thinly. I'm seeing success. We're very happy together. A few people chuckled politely, but my mother frowned, clearly deciding I'd been too sharp. Claire chimed in. You really should think about settling down, Vera. You can't build a life on compost and TED Talks. The room laughed, lightly, politely, but it scraped against my skin. It was Adam's father who unknowingly gave me the opening. He gestured at the decor. The design here is stunning. Whoever owns this place must be doing very well. I leaned back, swirling my coffee, and said, Yes, they are. Something in my tone made the maitre d' glance over again. I gave her the faintest nod this time. She slipped quietly out of the room. I watched the conversation swirl around me. Claire showing off her ring for the 10th time, Adam's father boasting about his latest golf game, my mother reminding everyone how she encouraged Claire to date Adam. No one noticed the soft click of the door as the maitre d' returned with a small leather folder. She placed it in front of me with the same deference she would for any high-profile guest. What's that? Claire asked. I flipped it open and signed without looking at the total. Just settling up. Adam's mother blinked. Why are you paying? Shouldn't we split it? I closed the folder and smiled. No need. It's on the house. Confusion flickered. My mother frowned. What do you mean, on the house? I held her gaze, feeling the first real spark of control all night. Because, technically, this is my house. The table went still. Adam set down his fork. I'm sorry, what? I leaned in just slightly, voice calm, steady. Maison Verde belongs to me. I own it. Every chair, every plate, every bite of food you've been praising all evening, mine. The silence was thick enough to cut with the dessert knives. And for the first time that night, I wasn't the one swallowing my words. The silence was almost comical. You could hear the faint hum of the kitchen through the closed door, the clink of glassware in the bar. At our table? Not a breath. Claire was the first to break it. You're joking. Her voice was flat, but her eyes flickered in that way they did when she was calculating whether or not she was the butt of a joke. No, I said, folding my napkin neatly. I bought this property last year. Opened the restaurant 6 months ago. Adam gave a low, incredulous laugh. You own a fine dining restaurant? I thought you were in, what was it? Waste management. Sustainable sanitation, I corrected. It funds my other ventures, including this one. My mother's mouth opened, then closed again. I'd never seen her at a loss for words. She looked between me and my father like someone had switched the conversation to another language mid-sentence. Finally, she found her voice. Why wouldn't you tell us? I tilted my head. Would you have listened? That landed heavier than I expected. My father shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Claire frowned but said nothing. Adam's mother tried to fill the space with a brittle laugh. Well, isn't that surprising? We had no idea you were in hospitality. I'm not, I said. This is part of a larger environmental project. Zero waste, closed-loop systems. Locally sourced everything. We compost on-site and supply rooftop gardens. It's exactly what I've been working toward for years. Claire's fiancé raised his eyebrows. That's impressive, I guess. His tone suggested he still wasn't sure if it was real. I leaned back, sipping my coffee. You've been eating my work all night. You've been sitting in it, breathing it in. But I guess when you think someone's a failure, it's easy to miss the details. That hit harder than I intended, but I didn't take it back. The table shifted uncomfortably. My aunt suddenly needed to check her phone. Adam's mother reached for her water glass like it could protect her from the atmosphere. It was my mother who finally said, Vera, you've always been sensitive. I almost laughed. Sensitive? Or tired of being dismissed? Claire crossed her arms. Why are you making this a big deal? You could have told us ages ago. Instead you spring it on us like, what? Like you're trying to humiliate us. I met her eyes. No. I'm trying to remind you I'm not invisible. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. Years of being the afterthought, the one who didn't quite fit, were pressing against my ribs. I saw Adam glance at Claire, silently asking if they should cut this short. Claire just shook her head, jaw tight. You've changed, my mother said finally, her tone like it was both an accusation and a lament. I smiled faintly. I've grown. There's a difference. The maitre d' reappeared to clear the plates, her expression unreadable but her eyes sharp. She could sense it, the tremor before the real quake. And as my family sat there, unsure of what to say next, I realized something I hadn't before. I wasn't here for their approval anymore. But they were about to hear exactly how I got here. I could feel their discomfort thick in the air, like the room had been sealed shut. For years, I'd swallowed my stories, edited myself down to the palatable version they preferred, the quirky sister who was always chasing some strange project. Tonight, I wasn't editing anything. I set my coffee cup down and looked directly at my mother. Do you know why I didn't tell you about Maison Verde? She hesitated. Because you thought we wouldn't care? Because I knew you wouldn't. My voice was steady, almost calm. When I launched my sanitation company, you told people I was between jobs. When I got my first major contract overseas, you called it a little trip. When I gave my TED Talk, the one that brought in international investors, you didn't even watch it. You said you were busy helping Claire pick out curtains. Claire bristled. That's not fair. It's accurate, I said, cutting her off. Every time I've tried to share my work, you've brushed it off, dismissed it, laughed about it. I stopped telling you because I was tired of proving myself in a court where the verdict was already decided. My father spoke for the first time all night. Vera, it's not that we don't respect what you do. Then what is it? I asked. Because from where I'm sitting, the only things you've ever celebrated are the ones that fit into your version of success. Marriage. Traditional careers. Things that look good in holiday newsletters. Adam cleared his throat. Look, maybe they just didn't understand your field. I turned to him. Understanding isn't the same as respect. You don't have to understand me to respect me. You just have to believe my work matters because I matter. That landed. Even Adam looked down at his plate. My mother's hands were clasped tightly in her lap, knuckles pale. You've been holding on to this for a long time. Yes, I said simply. Because I thought one day you'd see me without me having to shout. But tonight, sitting here, watching you praise every detail of a place I built while still finding ways to diminish me, it's clarifying. Claire's eyes narrowed. So what now? You get to rub it in our faces. I shook my head. No. I get to stop pretending your approval is the finish line. For a moment, no one spoke. The clinking from the kitchen seemed louder. I could hear my own heartbeat. Then my mother said, I suppose congratulations are in order. It wasn't warm. It wasn't proud. But it was something. I leaned back, studying them. The family I'd grown up with, the people whose opinions had once shaped every choice I made. And for the first time, I realized they were just people. Flawed. Limited. Not the ultimate judges of my worth. The weight I'd been carrying for years started to feel lighter. Not gone but shifting. The maitre d' approached quietly. Shall I bring the final wine pairing? Yes, I said, my gaze still on my family. Let's end this properly. They didn't know it yet, but the ending I had in mind wasn't about wine. It was about me walking out of this dinner no longer needing them to see me. The maitre d' returned with the wine, deep red, almost black in the glass. She poured it with the same elegance she always did, but I could feel her glance at me, just for a second, like she knew we were approaching the end of something. I raised my glass. To Claire and Adam, I said, because this was still, technically, their night. May you build something worth keeping, and may you both respect each other enough to see the whole picture, not just the parts that fit. It was subtle, but Claire's lips tightened. She clinked her glass against mine anyway. We drank. No one rushed to speak after that. The earlier energy, the bragging, the teasing, the casual dismissals, was gone. In its place was a fragile quiet, the kind that follows a truth no one wants to touch. My mother finally broke it. I didn't realize we made you feel so unseen. I studied her face. She wasn't crying. She wasn't apologizing. But for her, this was a kind of admission. You didn't make me feel unseen, I said. You chose not to see me. That landed hard. My father shifted in his seat. Claire's gaze dropped to her plate. Adam's father cleared his throat, clearly eager to move past the awkwardness. Well, I think we can all agree the food was excellent. I smiled faintly. I'll pass that along to my chef. A flicker of something, respect? Curiosity, crossed his face. But I didn't hold my breath. The staff began clearing the table. I glanced out the window at the city lights, their glow stretching endlessly. That's where my real family was. The colleagues, partners, and friends who'd believed in me without conditions. I stood. I should go. Early morning tomorrow. Claire blinked. You're leaving already? Yes. I've said what I needed to say. My mother looked like she wanted to stop me, but the words stayed trapped behind her lips. I stepped out into the cool night air, the door of Maison Verde closing softly behind me. The city smelled faintly of rain and fresh pavement. My car waited at the curb, but I didn't get in right away. I let myself breathe. For years, I'd imagined this moment, the day my family finally understood. But standing there, I realized something surprising. Whether they understood or not didn't matter anymore. They would go home tonight and replay my words. Maybe they'd feel guilt. Maybe they'd feel nothing. That was theirs to carry. I had my own weight to set down. As I walked toward my car, I felt it, this strange, exhilarating lightness of no longer needing to prove anything to anyone who refused to see me. And somewhere deep down, I knew this. I hadn't lost a family tonight. I'd simply stopped waiting for them to be mine. If you enjoyed my story, don't forget to like and hit subscribe. You will also enjoy other stories on AJ Family Drama. Until next time, bye.